Army basic training is 10 weeks long, and they have 4 phases that are kind of conducted during that time frame. And I want to give you a breakdown in this video about essentially what happens during those 4 phases. But even though Army basic training is 10 weeks long, it's really 11 weeks because week 0 that they don't tell you about, which is this horrible thing called reception. It sucks really bad. It's the worst. What's up, my friends? Welcome to this video. In this one, I want to explain the different phases, which are 4 specific ones, what happens during those phases. And obviously, if basic training is 10 weeks long and there's 4 phases, obviously these phases are more than a week long. But what happens during these phases? So I want to break that down. If that's the type of content you want, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, you're hitting that thumbs up, and maybe even sharing the video with someone that needs this information. But nonetheless, let's get into things. Now, this information is available on the Army's website, but the way they kind of break it down, I feel like they kind of break it down in like a cool hua kind of way, and I kind of just want to give you the down and dirty. You know, I'll read the definition of what they have on their site, but then kind of, I guess, tell you what that means, just to kind of break it down into a better understanding way other than the Army way of trying to make it sound cooler. So the first phase, that is yellow phase. That happens between week 1 and 2. Now, as I said, there is a week 0, so that first week is reception. Reception is not part of this. When you actually go off to basic training, because that reception week is all the shots and all the basic stuff you have to do to get in process into the system, and then you go off to your actual unit because the reception area somewhere is different. Then you go to the actual basic training unit to start doing things, and that begins yellow phase, which is, like I said, week 1 and 2. So yellow phase, all right? In the first phase, you'll start to adapt to the Army life and learn about discipline, teamwork, Army program, traditions, and more. Essentially is what that means is you're learning the basics, right? You're gonna be doing things like learning how to stand and parade rest, learning how to salute, learning how to, stand at attention, learning how to march. All those basic things are gonna happen in that first week and second week and into that, to kind of keep you up to date with how to do things in the Army. You'll learn the Army values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Essentially, you're going to learn that, memorize that, maybe even learn the Soldier's Creed, maybe even learn the Army song, and all that kind of stuff. Begin physical and tactical military training. It just means you're going to be doing PT, right? You're going to learn the military training of how to march, like I was mentioning, salute, but you're going to be doing PT because PT is more than just working out. You have like a very specific format of doing things. There's cadence, there's a certain way you're gonna do things to start off with your exercising and then extended rectangular formation, and you're gonna learn how to create that and how to form that up and how to, do all the different movements you have to do a PT formation and how to do PT, because PT a lot of times is done in cadence, and you'll learn all about what that means and how that works during that time frame. Build confidence and teamwork by navigating obstacle courses and other terrain. This is when you'll probably do the obstacle course, right? You'll probably do the obstacle course, you'll do the confidence course where you have things like doing a high tower, you have to, rappel down this little tower type of thing. So you'll have a lot of that stuff during probably week 2. It may happen probably most likely because you got a lot of stuff to knock out in week 1, and then probably the obstacle course perhaps in week 2. You probably also learn the basics of like land nav, but land nav at this point is pretty basic. It's really maybe you and a battle buddy kind of doing land nav together, but you're learning how to like read the map and how to shoot an azimuth and how to get your pace count and the real basics of land nav. Nothing too crazy though in basic training. But now I move on to the second phase, which is red phase, and that happens between week 3 and 4 of basic training. So the Army's definition of red phase goes a little something like this. During the second phase, you'll train to handle weapons and equipment and learn other hands-on aspects of being a soldier. Essentially, you're gonna learn basic rifle marksmanship. You're gonna learn how to take apart your rifle, how to put it back together, how to clean it, how to do your basic rifle marksmanship things, which involves like your breathing technique, your trigger squeeze. This is where you may do the dime technique where you typically put like a washer or a dime or some sort on the end of the barrel. You have a unloaded weapon, of course, and you're practicing your trigger squeeze to make sure you can pull that trigger and the dime or the washer, whatever they have on the end of that barrel, doesn't fall off. You may also do like the EST, which is like a digital kind of weapons qualification type of thing where they can actually see if you're pulling on the trigger or if you're not doing your breathing technique properly and other sorts of things to try to help you kind of get better at that before later on where you do get to the point where you'll do like weapons qualification. Some of the bullet points that it's got inside of here, it talks about begin familiarization and training with your assigned weapon, which is again like that weapons marksmanship stuff that I was talking about with the breathing and the trigger squeeze. Learn soldier tasks in hand-to-hand combat and life-saving skills. So you'll learn some basic combatives. Combatives is kind of like the tactical, kind of fighting kind of technique that the Army uses, which is essentially like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's not like it was back in old school days of doing hand-to-hand combat. The Army adapted the combatives type of hand-to-hand combat, so you'll learn some real basic stuff. It's not to the full extent where you're actually combatives qualified, because that's a whole course you can possibly do in the military that's like a week long or something like that, and then you get certified for level 1, and then you go up to level 2, and all the way up to level 3, I think is the highest one, but you'll learn some basics in basic training. You also have some very basic like life-saving skills, which is first aid. You're gonna learn how to like maybe do like a tourniquet, how to stop the bleeding, and some other kind of like just real basic stuff, where in your actual unit you may do a little bit more advanced things known as the Combat Lifesavers course and get a little bit more advanced with it. For individuals that are doing OSIT, I believe you guys do get more advanced with the medical training, where if you're just doing basic training because you're not in a combat MOS, then it's more just basic stuff. And if you want to learn the more advanced things, then you have to go to a Combat Lifesaver course at your unit. And then also during this time frame, you have a field exercise. So it says practice what you've learned during the first field exercise called the hammer. So you have the short field exercise. If I remember correctly, I think this is like maybe a one-nighter type of thing, or maybe a one-dayer, maybe not even overnight, but you have some like basic field exercise stuff where you'll do, and you'll do some basic tactical types of things. Even if you're not a combat MOS individual, you'll do some basics, because you're a rifleman first and then you're MOS second. So you still have to know the basics to know how to, engage in the enemy if, you're being engaged by the enemy. So you still have the basics you have to learn, and this is where you get a chance to kind of test some of that out and kind of practice it. But then we move to the third phase, which is white phase. That'll happen between weeks 5 and 7 of basic training. In the third phase, you'll begin training with your rifle and mastering how to work effectively within your small team. So even in the first bullet, it's basically mentioning that you'll do weapons qualification, because the first bullet says, expand your skills and understanding of basic rifle marksmanship, maintenance, and target engagement. So here's where you're actually going to be doing weapons qualification. You have to try to qualify with your weapon, and if you don't qualify, you just have to shoot probably multiple times, and eventually that you hopefully get it. It may take you a lot of times. You have to zero your weapon starting off to get familiar with it, and you have to make sure the sights are dialed in. You'll probably, in basic, do iron sights, which is just the basic sights of the rifle, whereas at your unit, you'll probably get a chance to use things like ACOGs or M68s or whatever type of optics they have on there. You can't use your own, but you have to use military issued ones. But during this phase of basic training is where you're going to do the weapons qualification. Learn how to prioritize multiple targets and further develop hand-to-hand combat skills. So again, that's still part of like your weapons qualification, but sometimes during this phase, you may learn some additional like hand-to-hand combat stuff, like with the rifle, like how to, do the butt stock to the head, and how to kind of use the rifle as a weapon. If you're like engaging in close combat, you're not shooting the individual. So maybe do some drills like in that kind of perspective, I guess. Then complete a 2-day, 2-night field training known as the Anvil. So again, just another field exercise, just a couple 2-day, 2-night little exercise where you're out in the field and you're kind of putting all the stuff you learned together into this kind of collective field environment. Now the fourth and last phase, that is blue phase, and that'll happen between weeks 8 and 10 of basic training. In the last phase, you'll refine and apply everything you've learned so far to complete your final rite of passage from civilian to soldier. So here's where you get to learn some advanced weaponry, right? You get to learn things like maybe the 50 cal, you'll do like the 203 maybe launcher, you'll probably do the AT4, but they're usually just like basic familiarizations of them. You don't get to spend a whole lot of time. It may just be get familiarized of how the weapon works, do a few engagements, and then kind of move on type of thing. Even like with the AT4, that's the rocket that you have on your shoulder. You usually do like a dummy round that you'll fire. Maybe one individual will actually fire a real live one possibly, or maybe it might be one of the cadre that kind of do it, one of the instructors or the drill sergeants that'll do it. But typically everybody else has like dummy rounds they have to kind of fire, so you won't get to actually fire the actual AT4, maybe at your unit, but not typically in basic training. This is also where the grenades are going to come in, right? You're going to learn about how to use grenades, how to properly do the proper technique and everything of doing like this little Heisman pose to throw the grenade, and then you'll have to do 2 live grenades. You'll have to throw those grenades. So that'll also happen during this phase. Heads up, by the way, like this is not a real grenade, but a real grenade actually has 2 pins. This one doesn't have one, but there's a secondary pin here, plus the pin here. And these pins are not very easy to pull, right? You see in the movies them pulling out with their teeth. It's not really possible with real live grenades, so don't think that you can do that, even though they're not going to let you do that kind of craziness anyways, but be aware that this pin is actually pretty difficult to pull out on a live grenade. And then the big thing here is you'll do a multiple day field exercise known as the forge, where you'll be out in the field and then you'll have a final ruck march from the field back to where you're going. That's usually, I think it's like 10, 12, something, I don't forget how many miles it actually is. It'll feel like it takes forever, but you know, you have this road march you have to do, and you probably have some kind of crazy ceremony that you go to at the very end to complete your training, right? Maybe have a bonfire going, maybe they have multiple flame torches going, maybe they have some cool stuff happening. Sometimes you even get a cool reward of a fun barbecue type of thing that they may kind of reward you with hot dogs and hamburgers. It may depend on how they kind of organize it, but essentially you're putting everything together during the forge and then ending it with a big road march to kind of cap off. And then during this time frame, you also do a lot of cleanup and graduation and all that fun stuff. Now, even in that breakdown, there's a few things they don't talk about, like at the very beginning, right? You're probably gonna have a physical fitness test you're gonna have to do. That's probably happened during that first phase, where you'll do the ACFT, or now you have the AFT as of making this video. You have a new one that if you're going on June 1st, you're gonna take the AFT, but nonetheless, you have that fitness test that you're gonna have to take. And that one won't be the one that counts. That's just to kind of see where you're at. If you pass it, cool. If you fail it, they know you need some work to do. Typically later on, probably in that last phase is probably when you're actually going to do the physical fitness test that counts, that they need you to pass. Maybe they'll give you a chance to retake it if you fail it, and then after so many attempts, they're going to have to reclass you, or not reclass you, but recycle you to a previous week, kind of like being held back. But at that point, probably in the last phase, you're also going to do the last physical fitness test that you have to pass before you can graduate. So for my viewers out there, and they went through basic training, what was your favorite phase? Did you have a phase that you enjoyed the most? Maybe you liked doing weapons qualification, maybe you liked doing hand-to-hand combat, maybe you just really liked when it was over and you liked the final phase because that meant you were closer to being complete. So let me know down in the comment section down below. For those of you that are maybe waiting to ship off to basic, is there a specific thing about basic training that you're worried about? Let me know. Just leave a comment. Maybe I can help you out and give you some tips, or maybe some of my viewers out there can fill you in and give you a little bit of pointers as to help you get through that process and make it a little bit smoother. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to support what I do here on the Christopher Chaos channel. I do have a merch store. You can visit my website down in the description box down below by visiting ChristopherChaos.com to pick out some merch, some t-shirts, some coffee mugs, some notebooks, all sorts of fun stuff. But the free way is always greatly appreciated by making sure that you're subscribed. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.